Greetings everyone, I'm Detective STARBORN, and I'm glad to see you on my YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on new and interesting videos. Thank you, and enjoy watching. In 2007, an event occurred at a Portuguese resort that would later be called the crime of the century. A 3-year-old girl from England vanished without a trace from a hotel room, leading to the most expensive investigation in British history. This case became entangled with dozens of theories and suspects, sparked international scandals, and even led to the parents being received by the Pope himself. In this video, I have gathered all available information and will try to answer the main question: what happened to Madeleine McCann? In 2007, Kate and Gerry McCann were spending a 7-day vacation at the quiet Portuguese resort of Praia da Luz. The choice of location for the British family with 3 children was quite obvious. Due to the huge number of tourists from the United Kingdom, Portuguese was only the 2nd or 3rd most commonly used language after English. Locals called the resort Little Britain. Additionally, the resort had 3 children's centers, and babysitting services could be arranged for times when the playrooms were closed. The couple was vacationing with a group of 4 families, 9 adults, each of whom was a medical professional, and 8 children, including the McCann's 2-year-old twins and their 3-year-old sister Maddie. The couple's vacation followed a rather routine pattern. Every day they had breakfast and lunch with their children in their apartments, and after meals sent them to have fun at the children's center. Every evening, between approximately 8:30 and 10:30, the adults would have dinner at the restaurant. The children were left alone in the apartments, with the adults periodically leaving to check on them, except for one family who had a baby monitor. The restaurant was about 50 yards from the apartments, and the McCanns had secured a table for their entire stay from which they could see the windows of their accommodation. The bedroom faced a parking lot and garden and was located near the back door. It had one window with shutters that faced the parking lot. Madeleine's bed was on the other side of the room. The twins slept in travel cots. Madeleine was in a single bed with a pink stuffed cat toy. She was wearing white and pink short-sleeved pajamas. On May 3rd, at around 8:30, Kate and Gerry went to the restaurant. They left the sliding patio doors closed but unlocked. During dinner, the parents periodically went to check if the children were all right. Their dinner companions did the same. At 9:05, the father went into the children's bedroom. According to him, everything was calm, and Madeleine was sleeping in her bed. The only thing that was different was that Gerry was certain he had left the bedroom door ajar, but during his second visit, it was wide open. Not giving this much thought, he returned it to its previous position and went back to the restaurant. Kate was planning to check on the children around 9:30, but the McCann's friend, Matthew Oldfield, offered to check on their children when he went to check on his own in the neighboring apartment. Kate agreed. Oldfield confirmed that everything was quiet in the McCann's apartment and left. Later, he admitted that he hadn't seen whether Madeleine was in her bed at that moment. Kate went to check on the children at 10 o'clock. She entered the apartment through the patio doors and noticed that the bedroom door was open wider than usual. But when she went to close it, the door slammed shut as if from a draft. Then she saw that the window had been opened from the outside. The twins were sleeping. Madeleine's stuffed toy was in her bed, but the girl herself was gone. After searching the apartment and not finding the child, Kate McCann rushed to the restaurant screaming that her daughter had been kidnapped. As the McCann's friends later recalled seeing them immediately after their daughter's disappearance, the parents were in deep shock. The girl's mother almost immediately began sobbing loudly and went into a stupor, while her husband ignored people and looked under every parked car hoping to find the child there. The parents searched for their daughter until 5 in the morning and only agreed to go to bed after repeated persuasion. By this time, the police were already examining the apartment. During the first search of the apartment, the Portuguese police behaved unprofessionally and made numerous mistakes. For example, investigators only notified Border Control about the missing child 24 hours after the investigation began, This deprived local services of the opportunity to intercept the girl's potential kidnappers. Additionally, Portuguese law enforcement failed to collect fingerprints from the crime scene in time, didn't establish a perimeter around the apartment, and ultimately didn't gather sufficient evidence. Half an hour after the girl's disappearance, large-scale searches began. Several dozen people participated, including resort staff and guests. They combed the surrounding area for about 6 hours. There was hope that the girl had simply gone for a walk after becoming interested in something and would soon be found. However, by morning it became obvious. Something terrible had happened. Portuguese police questioned the parents, restaurant staff, family friends, searched the surrounding area, and English media were already reporting the child's disappearance. The news was passed to journalists by the McCann's friends, who thought this would create public resonance and force Portuguese police to work better. However, this led to police bias against the parents. They believed that widespread publicity could harm the case, reducing the chances of finding the girl. The tension was heightened by the fact that throughout the investigation, the parents repeatedly accused the police of negligence, unprofessionalism, and a basic unwillingness to look for Madeleine. Perhaps this led to the parents themselves being considered the first main suspects. Portuguese police first voiced this theory 4 months after the girl's disappearance. According to their assumption, Kate and Gerry, who had long worked as doctors, accidentally killed their daughter by giving her too large a dose of sleeping medication in hopes that she would sleep until their return. According to the police, the parents feared responsibility for their actions and hid the body. They then created an impression for the public and police that Madeleine had been kidnapped. Since then, they allegedly moved the body to some secret location and buried it. This theory was based on the reaction of 2 dogs. One was trained to detect the scent of blood, and the other, decomposition. They were led through the areas where the family had been, but the animals only alerted inside the McCann's apartment. One of the dogs detected the scent of rigor mortis inside a car that the couple had rented 24 days after the girl's disappearance. Hair and tissue analyses from inside the car and apartment also recorded something that raised suspicions with Portuguese police. However, investigators later announced that neither the DNA test nor the results of the dog searches were solid evidence of the parents' involvement in the incident, mainly because in 70% of cases, the animals confused the smell of death with other scents, and the DNA test proved too imprecise. They found a witness who claimed to have seen a man carrying a sleeping girl that evening. Suspicion fell on 33-year-old Briton Robert Murat, who lived 3 minutes away from the apartments in his mother's house. For several months, he was considered the main suspect, but no evidence against him could be found. Then another tourist came forward who said that he had been returning to his room with his daughter in his arms that evening. After additional verification, it became clear that this was who witnesses had mistaken for the kidnapper. All charges against Robert Murat were dropped. He even managed to win compensation from British tabloids that had effectively declared him a criminal. Time passed, but the parents didn't lose hope of finding their daughter alive. They contacted a British PR firm and subsequently worked with them, trying to maintain public interest in the search. The distraught parents met with the U.S. Attorney General, the Pope, and participated in numerous talk shows. They also established the Madeleine Fund, which received £2 million in less than a year. Meanwhile, British investigators worked in parallel with the Portuguese, examining evidence and questioning witnesses. But there were few leads, and by 2008, Portuguese police closed the case. In 2011, UK Home Secretary Theresa May initiated an investigation called Operation Grange. Under this operation, a team of Britain's best detectives was tasked with uncovering the mystery of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. An enormous sum was allocated for the investigation, and British investigators once again questioned dozens of people in Portugal and England. The head of the group, Senior Inspector Andy Redwood, was confident that the possibility of finding the child alive remained. During the operation, they investigated everyone, those convicted of crimes against children, restaurant staff, tourists staying at the resort. However, none of the theories were confirmed. During their work on the case, detectives received more than 8,000 messages from people who claimed to have seen Madeleine. The majority of reports came from the United States, Great Britain, Switzerland, Mexico, and Singapore. It's known that investigators checked more than 100 such leads, but the information about them is either classified or unconfirmed. Despite the fact that Scotland Yard repeatedly refuted the theory about Madeleine's parents' involvement in her disappearance, Gonçalo Amaral, the head of the initial investigation by Portuguese police, long maintained this position. In July 2008, he published a book and subsequent documentary film, The Truth About the Lie, where he claimed that the McCanns had fabricated their daughter's disappearance to cover up her murder. Amaral spoke about the book as a collection of official evidence, but Madeleine's family described the work as absurd lies. Nevertheless, in Portugal, the book became a bestseller, bringing the publisher and author more than $1 million, according to some estimates. After the book's release, the investigator gave interviews to various TV channels, continuing to accuse Madeleine's parents of the incident and claiming that her body was still hidden in Praia da Luz. Later, he stated that the parents had allegedly cremated their daughter in a church near the crime scene. At one point, a theory was considered that the girl had been stolen on order for some wealthy family. However, investigators consider this version doubtful. Madeleine disappeared just 9 days before her 4th birthday. At this age, a child well remembers their family and loved ones and would unlikely easily accept strangers as a new family. There was also a theory that the girl became an accidental victim of burglars. According to this version, some criminals broke into the room, but the girl woke up and noticed them. The criminals decided to get rid of her, so she couldn't identify them. The version seems absolutely unconvincing for many reasons. First, if the burglars really decided to get rid of the girl, why would they take her from the room? Moreover, it's hard to believe that they were so afraid that a small child, seeing them in a dark room, would be able to remember their faces. According to British journalist Danny Collins, who once worked on Madeleine's story, the child couldn't have been kidnapped from her bed. Most likely, she left the apartment looking for her parents, after which she was kidnapped by strangers, the reporter believes. He supported his version with the position of the window shutters, which were closed when police arrived and could only be opened from the inside. No signs of forced entry were found on them, nor on the front door. According to Collins, this indicates that burglars or criminals didn't enter the apartment. The McCanns rejected Collins's version, believing that she couldn't have gone outside on her own. To do this, she would have had to open the front door, go through sliding doors, and an iron gate that had child protection, and then close them behind her. The journalist countered this by noting that the parents didn't even know that the shutters in the apartment couldn't be opened from the outside. Initially, the couple stated that the window shutters were open. If Madeleine really did go outside in her parents' absence, she could have fallen victim to several incidents. At that time, workers were repairing drains about 197 yards from the McCann's house. For this, they had dug a trench 72 inches deep and 47 inches wide. The girl could have fallen into this pit and lost consciousness, and the next day, when the tunnel was being filled in, they might simply not have noticed her. This version was refuted by the responsible foreman, who stated that his people and the police had checked the trench. British politician and writer Clement Freud, the great-grandson of Sigmund Freud, was even considered as a suspect. He was friends with the McCann family and also had a house in Praia da Luz. The man himself died in 2009, and in 2016, several girls accused him of child molestation. No evidence was found to support this theory, so it effectively ceased to be considered. There is a version that the girl was kidnapped and sold into slavery. Initially, witness statements mentioned 2 men who were seen near the hotel. They allegedly could have been members of an international gang that kidnapped children on order for influential perverts. It is assumed that the criminals have very wide connections, including within the Portuguese police. This would explain why the latter sabotaged the investigation and put forward hypotheses that were as far from the truth as possible. In 2015, the number of active investigators on the Madeleine case was reduced from 28 to 4, and by 2017, British authorities had spent more than $19 million in total on the investigation. The public repeatedly criticized the government for such large expenditures on a case whose chances of being solved decrease with each passing year. At that moment, it really seemed that the chances of finding an answer were practically non-existent. But everyone was wrong. In 2020, the case was being investigated not only by investigators from Portugal and England, but also from Germany. It was the latter who made a sensational announcement 13 years after the girl's disappearance. The likely perpetrator was known. Initially, his name wasn't disclosed to avoid hampering the investigation, but in the summer of 2020, German police revealed all cards. The main suspect is German Christian Brueckner, previously convicted of child molestation. Along with this, investigators voiced the most disheartening version. Most likely, the girl is no longer alive. In May 2007, the day before Madeleine's disappearance, Brueckner told one of his ex-girlfriends that he had a job to do in Praia da Luz the next day. He called this job horrible, but said he had to do it. 3 years later, another girlfriend joked that Brueckner looked like one of the composite sketches of the possible kidnapper of the little girl. She even asked him if he had kidnapped the child. That time, the man didn't give a direct answer, but merely shrugged his shoulders. Prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters, who is handling this investigation, stated that the police discovered another important detail. The suspect discussed kidnapping the girl in an online conversation with another sadist. According to the prosecutor, Brueckner kidnapped the girl, abused her, and killed her. Moreover, he believes this is far from the man's only such crime. At the time when Brueckner was named the main suspect, he was serving a prison sentence for assaulting a 72-year-old American woman in Portugal. German investigators began promptly investigating Brueckner's involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. They dug up 2 plots of land belonging to the man, and in both cases, they were met with significant discoveries. Under one plot, they found some kind of cellar, which newspapers called a secret room. Law enforcement didn't disclose information about what they managed to find, but they positioned this discovery as an extremely significant lead. On the second plot, they discovered a buried box with videotapes, the contents of which are also not being disclosed. Apparently, it contains horrific footage involving other victims of Brueckner, but not Madeleine. Brueckner himself didn't react to the accusation of kidnapping the girl. It's only known that immediately after his name was made public, the man was transferred to solitary confinement to protect him from other inmates. Ultimately, there's still a chance that he will confess to what he did and ease the suffering of the parents who have been searching for answers for 18 years. Even if this doesn't happen and the police don't find any substantial evidence, the overwhelming majority of investigators are confident that Brueckner is involved in this high-profile case. The emergence of the main suspect has renewed public interest in the 14-year-old disappearance. It might again receive sufficient funding. If Madeleine is alive, she should turn 22 years old on May 12, 2025. The parents still believe that their daughter is out there somewhere, but in recent years, they have shown less activity and devote more time to their 2 other children. Despite this, the girl's mother still buys her gifts for every holiday and believes that one day she will see her daughter again. Thank you for watching this video, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I look forward to your comments on this situation. That was Detective STARBORN. See you soon.